What does solo mean? To go solo means to travel unaccompanied. No crew to help me with my filming, no one in the car to keep me company. Traveling solo is something that is quite a challenge actually. But you can travel solo and you don't have to travel alone. I'm going to be joining my friend Juba from Juba's Journeys. He runs a guiding company called Endless Africa, and I am currently en route to Upington to meet up with a whole group of like-minded overlanders, and we are going to be heading into the Kgalagadi Transfrontier National Park. It's my first time heading to the park, so I will be doing all of the filmmaking and everything on my own, but we will be traveling together in a really nice group, and Juba is going to be showing us some real gems of the Kalahari. After that trip, I'll be heading into Namibia, where I will begin a true solo adventure all on my own. So what is the purpose of this episode? The purpose for me is to show people that even if you don't have a massive group of overlanding buddies and you don't have an exceptionally well kitted out vehicle, if all you have is the desire to go and travel and see the world and something that can take you there with four wheels, you can find somebody like Juba who can take you on an amazing journey. I'm very much so looking forward to it. I've had a whirlwind of a past month, and it is definitely something that I'm really grateful that I have not had to be sitting and planning and booking and phoning around and doing all of the admin of planning a trip. So I must say the timing of this couldn't be any better. But now it's time to hop in the car and make my way to Upington, where I can meet up with Juba and his team at Endless Africa.
My name is Juba and Quin. I also go by the nickname Juba. I'm the founder of Endless Africa. I think the last time that I've been on road overlanding, it was in the beginning of 2020. My wife and I did a big trip, which is featured on our YouTube channel, Juba's Journey. At the end of 2020, I decided to make overlanding my full-time career, and I started Endless Africa. We've been operating ever since. Endless Africa is an overland touring company that does guided overland tours to unique, rustic and remote locations across Southern Africa. Our focus is specifically going into areas that does not have cell reception and that is often quite difficult to get to. So for me, I think there's three things that really makes me feel like I'm in the Kalahari. Number one is the red sand. You can't be in the Kalahari if you're not in the red sand. Number two is the camel thorn trees. I think it's such an example of how hard it is here and the trees that survive here. And the third one is the sociable weavers, those big nests that you get with all the birds in there. I think when I see all three of those elements, then I know I'm in the Kalahari. So my first visit to the park was in 1998 with my parents, and I had such an amazing experience that it really kept me coming back here. Since 2016, I've been in the park every single year. My longest consecutive stay in the park has been 28 nights. I just find myself, it's a place that I keep on coming back to. So building up this knowledge over a number of years, and also having lived in the Kalahari for 2 years, it just made me focus on this area, and I really wanted to share the beauty of the area, a combination of the people and the animals and the plants that live in this area and how they manage to survive in an area that's got so little water, and it's a tough environment. And I think that's something that I really want to show people. You can't come into this area thinking that everything is the same as all the other places that you visit. Here you have to get an appreciation of each of the trees, of each of the animals and what they go through, especially because of the tough conditions in terms of heat, cold, and that there's very little rain that falls in the semi-desert area. That for me is like, you get a real appreciation and respect for this area once you've visited it.
My name is Quinton Rutherford. I've been a guide for the past 7 years. My passion is just being out and exposed to the wilderness. And I really enjoy sharing this with people that have the same passion as I do. And that's what really draws me to Endless Africa. The type of wildlife you expect to see in the Kalahari is adapted to the environment. That's what really makes the Kalahari unique. So how the animals survive in the area is through desert adaptation. And this is by means of, such as lions being able to go for 9 months without drinking water. And they gain the nutrients from the prey that they feed on to as far as drinking or licking moisture from the grass around them. And steenbok, for an example, are the most adapted species in the Kalahari, in my opinion, as they can go an entire year without drinking water, which is unheard of. And then you have all the way from the gemsbok, they can regulate their body temperature just from the facial features they have, as well as brown hyena that are able to change their diet from seasons due to the vegetation that's around them, such as winter when gemsbok cucumbers are around, summer melons are around. They no longer need to be these top predators. They can actually be omnivores, where they can spend the majority of their time feeding on summer melons as well as scavenging on the side, which is something unique that you don't see in other parts of the world. I am driven to share my passion with people and to provide an experience that not an ordinary person may experience on their own. The knowledge I've gained over the years, I feel it's vital that not only the South African but also foreigners from overseas will be able to be immersed with this wildlife that is slowly disappearing. And that is crucial in my opinion. There's very few places left in the world that have this untouched wilderness as the Kgalagadi.
The park is structured off of the two main rivers that run through from Namibia, the Nossob River and the Nossob River. Where the two rivers meet is the entrance of the park, known as Tweerivieren on the South African side and Two Rivers on the Botswana side. The Nossob River forms the border of South Africa and Botswana and runs up to the Namibian border where all three countries meet at Union's End. The park extends into Botswana, but this trip we will be focusing on the South African side. Tweerivieren is quite literally the gateway to the park. There is a restaurant, petrol station, a shop and a swimming pool. We had 2 nights to get ourselves somewhat familiar with the park.
Are your tongs long enough, Juba?
Oh, beautiful, hey?
You afraid of the fire? I'm not sure who I need to speak to at upper management in Rome Overlanding, but this is how I would like to be arriving at my camp from now on. With a fire lit, rolling in from some game viewing, sun setting, beautiful living. Look at this. If you think I defrosted meat, you'd be wrong.
It's one of the bigger campsites and can accommodate quite a few vehicles. However, the campsites are spaced far apart enough that you don't feel on top of each other. We enjoyed some great evenings around the fire, watching thunderstorms roll across the land in the distance. And after spending a couple of days together, our group was comfortable and the chats around the campfire were brilliant.
So we're up and at 'em. Kgalagadi is not a place where people hang around and sleep in. The campsite is almost empty this morning. It is a Sunday, so a lot of people are heading home, but a lot of people are heading into the park. Seems to be the mornings are the most critical time to see animals around here, so people really take advantage of that. So I'm going to do the same thing. The gates have only just opened. I've got some coffee and some oats in the car, and let's get out there.
The game viewing areas from here are actually really nice. You can head up either towards Mata Mata or Nossob and cross over the dune roads to either side. So you can cover many angles over a day, and I thoroughly enjoyed the roads. They are beautiful. Nossob is the next South African campsite further north and was my favorite campsite of the 3 major ones. We would be stayed here the longest out of all the camps.
We have arrived at our Nossob camp. I spent the afternoon sitting around being incredibly lazy. I kind of burnt myself out a little bit yesterday with all the game driving.
I love the feeling of community in this camp. We met a bunch of Rome viewers here. Nossob has all the amenities of Tweerivieren, but has its own watering hole and bird hide. My favorite part was in the evening. The camp had plenty of jackals running around, so it has a nice wild feeling, but you can still walk around safely.
We've had an amazing evening here.
It's full moon right now. It's absolutely beautiful. Our stay in Nossob has been excellent. The Endless Africa team hosted us to an incredible dinner. We arrived back from checking out the lions and everything to an amazing staanrib on the fire, some wors, home-baked bread, all sorts of really nice little treats. So it was quite excellent.
In the day, you can walk around and find owls sleeping in the trees, so it was exciting and had a bit of a wilder, more open feeling about it. As part of the Endless Africa tour, Juba had organized a lovely evening game drive for us, and we went out to soak in the Kgalagadi at and beyond sunset. It was a quiet evening, but we got to see the famous little barking geckos whose voice is the soundtrack to an amazing overlanding trip. We also saw some beautiful owls prepping for an evening of hunting and some bat-eared foxes, which are actually termite eaters if you can believe it. And then, just as we were driving into camp, a brown hyena literally ran past us into the waterhole of the camp. Our next campsite would be Mata Mata, and is actually also a great camp. I would say between Tweerivieren and Nossob. It has all the same facilities as the other camps, but it's also a border post between Namibia and South Africa. You don't get the same amount of wildlife in the camp as Nossob, but the cutest little meerkats live in the camp, and they are super adorable. They wrestle each other and come up really close for some attention. There is some good exploring to do on the roads outside the camp, and this area is well known for the cheetah sightings and had some lovely dune scenery. After 7 days in the park, I realized that you could easily spend a month exploring the Kgalagadi. Now, outside of the camp, this is where the heart of your experience is going to be. Things that are going to be key focal points here are going to be the watering holes and the picnic spots. The water holes are where your main wildlife sightings are going to gravitate around. They are roughly every 10 kilometers apart and are usually brimming with birdlife and antelope. And that means usually not far behind are the predators and scavengers. Due to the desert adaptation of the animals though, not all of them are completely dependent on water holes. Quin informed us that the antelope that struggles the most with water is the wildebeest, needing to drink more often than most of the animals in the park. There are also a few famous water holes, like Polenswa and Kamkwa, who are usually well populated by jackals, and photographers can often get dramatic shots of jackals catching birds around the watering hole. I, however, was not fortunate enough to see that myself. I did actually get lucky a couple of times. Near Mata Mata, we spotted the very elusive brown hyena, which is super rare to see them, as they typically roam around at night. One of the water holes had a great variety of buck, and it was good to see the populations of game really thriving. They all looked very healthy, even considering the area has been unusually dry this year. The picnic spots are situated roughly every 50 kilometers. This is where you can get out of your vehicle, have a bathroom break, or breakfast or lunch, and this is where Endless Africa would host us for a beautiful brunch spread.
Yes, the scuttle's going.
How's it going?
Yeah. What a way to arrive. Yeah, very nice.
It was awesome to meet up with the rest of the group and chat about our morning sightings and plans for the day. These brunches were an absolute luxury, but so appreciated and really made it feel like a holiday. Sometimes you even get lucky at the picnic spots and get an excellent sighting. I arrived at Dikbaard's Kalk upon recommendation of a viewer of the show who I stumbled upon in the park, who had seen 2 lionesses nearby, and there they were right opposite the picnic spot with all the onlookers enjoying the sighting and their lunch.
I'm panting about the same. I'm just holding it off for this video clip.
And just bear in mind that this is right at the picnic spot. So right across the road is the picnic spot. Lions getting up, having a walk, having a drink of water. People are sitting at the picnic spot, watching that all happen. I like this place a lot. I think Wolfie's going to be really jealous when I get home and tell him all about this. Really jealous.
If you visit Lair's dry picnic spot, you can also head right up to Union's End, where you can stand at the point where Namibia, Botswana and South Africa meet.
So here we are, Union's End. Quite an interesting little spot. Now if you look on there, that says Gaborone 300 kilometers, Windhoek 547 kilometers and Pretoria 773 kilometers. So right here behind me is Namibia, Botswana and I am in South Africa. It's quite an interesting little spot. There's a nice little info board here explaining a lot of the little stories and things of the Kalahari, and there's a little book just to sign there and, you know, put your name in.
I enjoyed the picnic spots because it just gives you a little bit of time outside of the vehicle. Because besides being in camp, these are the only places you're allowed to leave your vehicle. So there are times when it can feel quite restrictive being stuck in your vehicle all day long. Luckily, the animal sightings and scenery make it worthwhile. The Kgalagadi is the enthusiast's playground. Many people who visit here are regulars and will typically visit every single year or even multiple times a year. It's really difficult to get bookings and is typically booked around a year in advance. So sometimes just getting a spot in the park is difficult. So to be able to just book a tour with Juba and not have to worry about the planning a year in advance was just brilliant for me. Probably one of the biggest draw cards to the Kgalagadi is the presence of big cats. Famous for its cheetah, leopard and lion sightings, the open landscapes to get good visibility, the dunes that they love to perch on and plenty of trees to hide in. My luck tends to be terrible on wildlife trips, but my experience of the predators here blew me away.
That's insane. That is amazing. I've never had a cheetah sighting like this in my life before. Absolutely beautiful.
One of the days when we were staying at Nossob, I had an amazing lion sighting. We went out on an afternoon drive and as we were heading up towards Polenswa, a lioness was walking straight at us down the road. She had clearly just eaten and was so stuffed, so she lay down in the road to nap. You could still see the blood on her face and paws, and it was so close and intimate. We then found the rooi hartebeest further up the road that she caught and waited there to see what would come and claim the spoils. And just as we were about to leave, a beautiful jackal came through and very nervously couldn't believe he was the only one at the kill. He enjoyed a good meal before we had to head back to camp as the gates were closing. Where there are predators, there must be prey, and the Kgalagadi was actually brimming with wildlife and there were plenty of buck around the rivers. The classic springbok, gemsbok, wildebeest were all accounted for in droves, and these antelope compete for the most precious resource in the Kalahari, water. The wildebeest aren't as efficient with their desert adaptations as the gemsbok, so they are a lot more aggressive around the water holes, and because they move in numbers, can bully some of the other buck. When all these animals come together, it's quite a sight. We encountered a couple sections where we got a good snapshot of how healthy and populated the park is. A buck that you see plenty of here in the park, but not too many in other places I've traveled, is the rooi hartebeest. This is the first time I've seen so many. And something Quin taught us about the buck is that when they're in these massive herds, they sprint and jump around to show potential predators that they would be difficult prey, leaving the less active and boisterous antelope looking like a potential meal. Something that really shocked me for some reason was seeing giraffes in the desert. I associate them so much with the bushveld that seeing them in the Kalahari was just odd. But when I saw how they were flourishing here, it started to make sense. It's a harsh place, but as much as the buck are vulnerable, a lot of them live very happy and healthy lives. With the Kgalagadi being such a tough place to survive, there are a few specialized survivors that manage to live off of the success of the predators, the scavengers of the Kalahari. The brown hyena is probably the most adapted of them all and the most elusive. But something that surprised me was the vast quantity of jackals. They have really adapted to the microbiomes of each waterhole. Some of the jackals have adapted to catch and eat birds, snakes, and all sorts of things, as well as scavenge on the prey of the big predators. But battling off massive squabbling committees of vultures is beyond their station in this ecosystem. Something you actually don't easily find out in the Kgalagadi is the spotted hyena. These might be commonplace further north in Botswana, but out here, the prevalence of jackals and the harsh conditions mostly keep them out of the area. But that didn't stop us from getting a great sighting of 3 hyenas defending their den from a couple of lionesses. There are times in the park where it's quiet, very quiet. The game becomes sparse, the predators are well hidden, and it feels like there aren't any animals in the park. That's when you need to look to the skies and the trees. There is an abundance of incredible bird life in the park, ranging from beautiful battle eagles to pale chanting goshawks and even peregrine falcons. But you also get your small red-faced finches, pygmy falcons, crimson-breasted shrikes and sociable weavers. Your world changes when you start to appreciate birds. One of my favorite things I found about the Kgalagadi was all the little creatures that are ever so sociable and confident to get right up close to us. We found them all around the park, and they come in all shapes and sizes. They seem to share their tunnels and seem to have adapted perfectly to the harsh conditions. Mongooses, meerkats, ground squirrels, and even interesting animals like the bat-eared fox can be such cute sightings. Honestly, I get pretty excited when I see them in the wild. We also stumbled across a couple slithering snakes, like the famous Cape cobra and a mole snake, and a pleasant surprise was a wild honey badger.
I do a lot of overlanding trips, and a lot of them are quite a lot of work. Juba and Quin have made this process so enjoyable and so relaxing. It's really lovely, and especially moments like this where we've got a nice little slice of the Kalahari all to ourselves makes it extra special. I mean, this morning, we were in the Kgalagadi and we were looking at cheetah and leopard and all sorts of amazing things, and now we're out here. We're going to be having a potjie under the stars in the Kalahari. I think we're going for a scorpion hunt just now. I mean, what? This is amazing. This is so amazing. Now, I don't want to show you too much of what's going on here and too much of the experience, because I actually want you to come here. I want you to do this experience. I think this is something that for people who are passionate about overlanding or want to get into overlanding, I think this is a fantastic way to, get the courage to go and do it. You've got somebody like Juba and Quin looking after you. They're filling in the blanks with some of the meals and stuff like that, and they're really easing you into the experience, especially the tour we've done now, tackling the Kgalagadi on the South African side. You can do that in a high ground clearance vehicle, probably with just a diff lock on the back and a good set of all-terrain tires. So I think this is a very approachable tour for a lot of people. And for the more experienced people, you can join him on something like his Mabua trip, which is one that I want to go on next, because that, if this tour is anything to go by, I think that tour, that is going to be beautiful to be in those places with Endless Africa. So I must say, so far, this trip is amazing. It's not easy to find a place in the middle of nowhere, but Juba's done it. This is awesome. It's gonna be my, pretty sure this is my first time camping in the middle of a pan. Awesome, 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 awesome.
I can honestly say being a guest on this tour is so worth it. And I want to make a trip like this my holiday each year. I got the time to relax and truly enjoy myself, and it was just the break I needed. If you get the chance or you're even slightly interested in an experience like this, get in touch with Endless Africa and just book it. You will not regret it. And who knows? Maybe the next trip we'll be on it together. Thank you so much for watching, and I'd just like to thank my Patreon members for supporting the show month after month. Check you on the next one. Cheers!